We're from the Doctor Who Club of Western Massachusetts, and we're here to talk about the last 50 years or so. My name is Joe, and I've been a Doctor Who fan. My mom was a fan of the old series, but I never really paid a lot of attention to it because it didn't make as much sense as Star Wars or whatever else I was watching. And it was weirder and sillier, so I didn't pay attention to it then. But since I've picked up a lot of the old stuff and the new series from the get-go, I thought it was pretty awesome. Yeah, that's me.
I'm Nikki. I've just been into Doctor Who since the newer stuff, really. Working on getting into the old.
Hi, I'm Alicia, and I have been watching Doctor Who for almost 3 decades, and I love it, so I'm excited to be here and talk about it.
I'm Andy. I've been watching the show since about 1979. Watched all the classic shows, and I love the new program too, and some of the forgotten stuff that happened in the 1990s.
Yes.
Very nice. So we're here to talk about why you're all here. Why this show has maintained a following over the past 50 years, what we've liked about it, what might have been some missteps, what things keep it going, and we'll hopefully keep it going again more in the future. And everything else in between, spin-off series and failed spin-off series and books and radio plays and stuff. So does somebody have any particular place you want to start? I mean, we could go through doctor by doctor, but I think that's kind of an elementary experience. And if you get the latest Entertainment Weekly, they do that in there.
I was away from that and I called.
Sorry.
My question is, what do you guys like about the first Doctor? That's one of my favorite ones, and great.
Well, for me at least, what I enjoyed about the first Doctor was not so much his personality, but was sort of the type of show Doctor Who was during the first Doctor, where it was kind of like you've got his granddaughter who's a young child being brought to different places so he can teach her about stuff, and it was almost like the Magic School Bus, but
It's a Time Lord, I swear.
yes, yeah. So that was just sort of an interesting, different kind of thing to have on TV, and people didn't really know what to make of it. I don't think everyone really knew what to make of it right away, but that was what did it for me. What were your impressions of the first Doctor?
Well, it was kind of unlike anything that had ever been seen on television or film before. BBC, even back then, was notoriously cheap and had no budget. So they tell their people, we want you to make a show about an alien who looks human, who has a shape-shifting time-space machine, can go anywhere in time and space, and we're giving you no money to do it. And only a few episodes later, they came up with the Daleks, which were amazing looking even in 1963 and have the same basic shape today.
And have been responsible for toilet plunger sales all around the world.
For the longevity of the show.
And they're really a cultural icon throughout Britain. I mean, there's no one that doesn't know what a Dalek is throughout Britain.
It was that Dalek they dug up in a swamp last week.
Yes. It just looked like it had been through the Time War.
I wonder if anybody gave a jump backwards for a second going,
It can't be real. No, it's funny because I've been watching it for so long, and I was so young when I started. Like, it's a little, but I love that shirt that says "You never forget your first Doctor," and I really would. But it's funny, like I hate to do this, but I actually don't quite remember how I started watching Doctor Who. I know that the third Doctor was my first favorite, and I'm pretty sure that's where I started. Though for some reason, Tom Baker's, the fourth Doctor's episode, The Sunmakers, sort of sticks out, and that may actually be the first one I saw. But I then went back and saw William Hartnell as the first Doctor and Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor, and so it wasn't like I had this feeling of like the moment of discovery watching the first Doctor. But I loved it. There was just something about, like, even though he was all crotchety, like, and I think it was his, having his granddaughter there, Susan, kind of made him approachable. Like there was something that I could relate to, because even if he was all crotchety, like of his character, that's part of the reason he left Gallifrey in the first place, because he felt like the Time Lords were too stuffy and too insular, and he wanted to go out instead of being like Time Lords on high, you know, making sure this is what's going on in the universe. Like, he wanted to be out there and exploring and interacting with people, and so, you know, I think that, you know, that's, you know, one of the big motivations for his character. So it wouldn't make sense to have him out there like without companions.
And who would he really have to save? They didn't have to. Really, just like
Yeah, that's better clever.
like Superman saving random people, or just saving the planet over and over. Oh, when's ready to
This is getting so boring. I save the planet every fucking week.
And also, there are also like a lot of times like you'll have a single episode where he has this bond with like a local or something, and I think those are also really cool because it's not quite companions, but at the same time it's more than just faceless people.
Yeah, it's still connecting with.
Yeah, the one-off companions in the David Tennant specials were fun.
Astrid.
But you can't really call Will for one off.
That's
Well,
true.
Will's not a one-off, but like Astrid and
And that Mary Sue girl on the bus there.
I hate it.
I gotta say that's one of the differences that I like from the original Who to the new, is that idea that there are companions that keep coming back, or acquaintances that keep coming back, because there wasn't so much of that in the original series, and it's really cool to watch them. And I think part of that is just that television has changed so much. That's so much more a part of many shows now. But that you keep coming back. There are these recurring characters and recurring places and things and themes that not just go through, you know, storylines that don't just go through a season, but, you know, several seasons. Like, I think that's really cool.
Second
You also
question.
get some information about the companions' lives. Like in the old series, it's just people would leave with the Doctor, and did they have family? Did they have friends? Were there missing persons? And then, so I kind of like that you get to actually meet that they have families. They have, you know, some history.
I have a question. How many of you feel like Doctor Who is a science fiction show?
Define science fiction.
Because I've seen a lot of debates where people say it's actually fantasy because he's got a magic wand and the science whatever's going on, whatever science he uses to describe it doesn't have to even remain consistent throughout the series. It's just magic.
well, it's very, very soft science fiction. That it's not only science, but it works a lot like magic.
It's godlike technology.
Yeah, so that's
saying
that's
that any
science.
significantly advanced science is interesting.
Arthur Clarke.
So, but is the Doctor Gandalf? I mean, does he have the ability to
In one episode he was, yeah.
And do you think that does the Doctor need the companions to do what he does, saving the universe all the time? I mean, specifically written in like Dr. Donna.
He needs the companions to rein him in sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, more often than not, the companions actually get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
They get him in trouble.
I think he needs the companions to sort of motivate him to care.
Yeah, he gets them in trouble.
I think the companions make him care.
It's like with Donna in Turn Left, where, you know, I think everyone needs someone from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the world should have been covered by a lot of
If he
people.
stopped caring about anything.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of needs the companions there. Sometimes without companion, he'll go completely insane and become Time Lord victorious, and sometimes we'll just kind of go, I'm retreating from the universe, fix your own problems.
Well, also from an audience perspective, we need someone to like ground the Doctor, because he's this outrageous guy. But if we don't have anyone who's like, not necessarily human, but like more relatable to the audience, then it's just like, oh, there's this guy, which is why I love Craig from. It's so perfect because he's just such a normal guy, and then you see like how alien the Doctor really is, like compared to someone like Craig, even more so than someone like Amy or Donna or whatever.
Yeah, she still won't let me name our kids, so I'm good.
Speaking of companions, what is it? Everyone's thoughts on Clara? Don't have any yet.
Oh my God.
Too soon to
Yeah,
go. Too soon to
kill her in
come.
every episode.
It's
They keep
developing.
coming back.
I've got a theory. I've got a theory that just like in the episode where the Doctor and Hillary and Amy kept falling asleep and not sure which one was the dream world, and it turned out it was some bit of space dust that was created by the Doctor's brain, I think Clara is the ideal companion created by the Doctor's brain, and she's just going to keep getting recreated everywhere he goes
So
because
he's
he's so.
hallucinating her?
Because yeah, he's in shock after losing the writing, and so he's creating whatever the person
What do you guys think of these doctors? Personally, I love it in eye wire. Watch it for the doctor, watch it for the doctor.
Yeah.
About the doctor.
Yeah, right.
I can forgive just about everything in it except the doctor being half human.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a big Eighth Doctor fan now. The Fourth Doctor is my doctor, but I'm a big Eighth Doctor fan partly because I feel like he didn't get a fair shake.
No, he did not. You're right.
They did an awful lot with him with novels, which are considered
Comics.
canon, 50 novels plus. So he did get a good run. Plus, the audio plays are also, he's getting a really good run. The thing is I'm really psyched to see that he's going to be featured in the 50th. For the simple
Serious?
reason, yeah.
Yeah.
He's confirmed as going.
I think it's really important to.
Well, they're doing all of them either through live action or through CGI and compositing. But the thing is he's actually confirmed to be playing the part.
Very cool.
And I like him for two reasons. One, he's a little bit off, just like Tom Baker, just like Christopher Reeve, who's another one of my favorites. I like the alien doctors. I like the ones that are a little bit out there that you can't quite.
We're all a
relate
little
to.
bit out there.
Some more so than others.
But the other thing that I like about him is he's the one that pushed the button. He's the one that ended the Time War.
So, even if we have never
We don't have
seen
any
it.
details about, specific events or anything, but we know that he's the one that ended the Time War.
I think
So that I have a lot of respect for the Eighth Doctor.
Which may or may not have led to the regeneration.
Exactly. Right. My theory is that he just couldn't handle the fact that he just basically erased his race.
Yeah.
That's why he regenerated. But
I think it's important to look at that, especially since we're talking about 50 years of Doctor Who, is looking at that movie in the context of the time that it was done. Because for me, as a Doctor Who fan, I mean, like I said, I've been watching Doctor Who since, about 1985. And it was not cool at that time. I just
No,
want
it
to say
wasn't,
that. Like, you would not have seen an article in the paper about Doctor Who,
Nope.
back then. It was not cool to be a Doctor Who fan. You wouldn't have seen a store like Newbury Comics even with a whole wall, of Doctor Who stuff. It just wasn't there here in the States. It was pretty big in England, but it wasn't so big here. And, and when, as fans here, we were all watching like bootleg copies. We were watching it on PBS. The internet wasn't,
We couldn't have torn something on the same day. We had to wait
Yeah.
months or years to see the new
Yeah.
episodes.
And so, and at one point, Laserdiscs. I don't know if anybody in here remembers Laserdiscs. A few episodes came out on those. If you don't know what Laserdiscs are, think CDs and DVDs, but like this big.
They're roughly
that's a format that I'm glad did not catch on. But anyway, so as a fan here in the States, we got very excited because we felt like that movie, that was the American Doctor Who, and we were like, yes, it's coming. They realized that there are fans that are not just in Britain, and yes, this is for us. And so having Eric Roberts play the Master, and I didn't even really know who Eric Roberts was at the time. I knew about the other science fiction and fantasy movies that he's been in, but I didn't really know who he was. And that kind of thing. And even the romance between the Doctor and this guy, I was like, okay, I didn't care because as a fan, I was like, yes, this is for us. And when it bombed and it went nowhere, we were very, very upset. So I think the fact that now Paul McGann, he wasn't forgotten, that his Doctor became this big thing in the audiobooks.
He's been very
They're so good. And for the most part, he's not a throwaway Doctor. I think that's really cool that there was this one-off experiment that didn't go so well, but yet fans embraced him, and not only the fans but also the BBC and the folks who are producing the audio plays and everything. They embraced him too, and so now the Eighth Doctor has as much canon as a lot of other as the other Doctors, but because it wasn't on TV, people sort of tend to forget it. But if you haven't checked it out, I definitely encourage you guys to check out that stuff. So it's really cool. It has its place.
Yes, over there.
The question that I have about the Doctor Who movie in 1996, the Doctor is half human, and then in the new series, he's 100% Time Lord. What happened there? Is it something to do with the regeneration, or he was later on
I'm going to guess that his fob watch was half open.
All they said in the movie was that he was the Eye of Harmony, which wasn't the real Eye of Harmony, part of it, could only be opened with a human retinal pattern. They didn't actually say that he was half.
Yeah, but we've seen enough Buffy, and we know how easy Harmony is to fool us.
There's a thing the Dr. Booker is like, hey, you want to know a secret? I'm half human on my mother's side. That's what.
It's a one-off comment that wasn't.
They could just be lying.
That's true though, although.
Rule number one.
That's true. And then also, but when you look at River Song or something, even if he was half human, he is time, like, he's so, the human half doesn't really have any that much effect.
Well, yeah, River was a Time Lord because
Time in the TARDIS.
So it's like,
Yeah.
but human DNA, so there you go.
Yeah, but, so it's probably the DNA.
And I mean, again, there's, if we've seen him become fully human, there's no reason why the healing art couldn't make him half human if he needed to for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's an explanation. It's magic. So,
I think there's a bit of a comic somewhere where he said I was fooled by worst enemy using only a half-broken community arch, and it was a lie. So he's sort of half explained it. In a throwaway comic.
yeah, maybe. So something I wanted to mention, because I see a lot of cosplayers, we do a lot of cosplay. Many of the Doctors have had sort of like token items with them that have defined them. How much do you think that is just, the BBC trying to visually differentiate, or how much of these items are actually a part of who the Doctor is? What do you think on?
I think both.
Yeah, it's part of the style.
I know the scarf was an accident.
Yeah.
They gave her a huge bag of fabric, and she was so excited about knitting a scarf that she used every single piece of fabric, and
Just didn't stop.
it stuck.
Yeah. I have to wonder if a lot of it wasn't simply just the actors had a whim with this. Well, this seems like
Like what, I'm
something
gonna
I'd
wear
like to
celery? Like.
Colin Baker, who was 6, he wanted to wear like black and be really like serious. They're like, no, you're wearing this crazy. I want the whole question.
My response to that question is, just from the point of view, I'm an actor and like trying to find character points and everything. No matter why anything came about, like the costume designer was given a whole bunch of fabric and went crazy on the scarf, or no matter why something was initiated, why does that mean like the actor's going to find a justification for it, and it becomes a part of the character. So I'm not really sure where I'm going with this, but
So, I get what you're saying though, that even though it might have outside reasons, it's still part of the character within the canon because within the canon.
But you have to remember now, there's the story about Matt Smith and the costume going around right now. The original plan for Matt Smith's Doctor's costume was a piratey looking costume.
Yeah.
And they started, Matt started throwing ideas, and Stephen Moffat's like, well, no, we're not doing this, no, we're not doing this. Well, let's try it. And Matt starts jumping around and getting into the Doctor we all know when he was 11. Wasn't that when he had the original costume on?
Well, and it's interesting because as Matt Smith's tenure as the Doctor has continued, it seems like every so often they throw something new in there. Oh, I wear bow ties now. Bow ties are cool. Oh wait, I've got a fez. Oh wait, now I'm wearing, yeah.
The fez was I read some sort of like, they had to destroy the fez because Matt really like there was like if they give him the fez, you'll never not see the fez.
But that's because it's still appearing as one of the trailers for the mid-season is Matt changing out of a monk outfit, and he's in this drawer and he pulls out the fez and puts the fez on.
Yeah, it's
I was
true.
wondering if that was a spoiler, so I didn't see all of it.
I mean, I think, like, again, you go back to this idea that, okay, you have this show where it's now expected that the main character is going to change, the actor is going to change. It's not like the soap opera when they say, and now the part of Joe Smith is going to be played by that.
someone
Like,
they
it's
don't
not,
even tell you.
Yeah,
You just start watching and you're
right.
like, who is that?
Yeah. So, so I think it's, you know, and the Doctor's always had this like quirky sense of fashion and like, you know, offbeat, and you know, but they keep, so it's like, it's differentiating. It's not just that they're changing the actor. They talk about, you know, the Doctor, when he regenerates, the Doctor's personality changes, and, you know, as David Tennant said, you know, the me that's me now is going to die, you know, like that kind of thing. So there's enough of the Doctor, you know, pulling through all of that, that he likes things in his pockets. He likes toys. He likes, you know, it's going to be a different toy for each regeneration, you know, but that some things, you know, because he's still the Doctor, and so that's still throughout. I think one of my favorite moments with those defining, you know, the defining costume props was the celery stalk in Caves of Androzani, which was the episode where Peter Davison's Doctor, which forced Peter Davison's Doctor to start regenerating, was you know, he needs to use it to breathe, and it was partly because they were like, dude, this stupid celery stalk has been here for like the writers and Peter Davison were talking, like, it's here, like it serves no function, why do I even have it, like, you know, and he's like. And evidently, also, he tells a very funny story in some interview that I saw where he actually hates celery. Like, and so part of it was the writers just wanted to make him eat it.
Is he going to joke about why Ten is so skinny? Because in every generation, he's allergic to jelly babies. It's from Search for the Truth, which is a great documentary. I think that was awesome that cowboy outfit with the hat.
Speaking of design changes, what do you think about the new TARDIS interior?
No.
That's interesting. This reaction is very interesting.
I think it works in the way of he had this very warm, vibrant color thing with Amy and Rory, and now he's lost them, and it's very dark and metallic, and he's been hiding in a cloud.
Yes.
It makes sense that his brooding, the TARDIS is reflecting that.
Yeah, especially because the TARDIS is a, you know, living, breathing woman. You forget that sort of woman, bright spirit. You know, it's a personality.
Somehow.
She has a personality, even if she's in, I don't know.
And I mean, pragmatically, it's nice because apparently, since it's a much smaller set than the previous interior, we now can build sets for other parts of the TARDIS. And so that's nice to finally see.
I want to see the freaking swimming pool.
We have seen the swimming pool before. We saw the swimming pool when back on Gallifrey. The
Invasion of Time.
Yes, thank you. We have seen the swimming pool once before. You know,
we saw Leela swimming in the swimming pool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So you know, it's yeah. I think it's really cool. I would just also like to say like I'm all for giving it a chance. You know, like because we haven't seen very much of it. We haven't lived with it with that set very long. You know, we got to see a tiny little bit of it in The Snowmen. So like, you know, I'm willing to go with that. I was actually, as a fan, I don't know how many of you guys felt this way, but I was a little more put off by the fact that when Matt Tennant regenerated, everything changed. Like I was used to. Okay. Sorry. When Matt Smith became the Doctor, they changed everything. Before that, you know, each time the Doctor regenerated, the theme song had maybe changed a little, the credits had changed a little, the Doctor Who symbol had changed, you know, the graphics that they used, the typeset, the font, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like that changed a little, but it was like, okay, here's Matt Smith, so we're giving you new Doctor, new costume, new theme song, new graphics, new TARDIS look. I was a little like, whoa, can we like back off just a little? Can we keep something the same? So I'm just curious how many people like kind of felt that way.
I mean, kind of connected to that, the whole thing with the Fields of Trenzalore, it's like up until Matt Smith becomes the new Doctor, it's like the Doctor is a Time Lord traveling, just a Time Lord. But once we get to Matt Smith, it's not just the Doctor's a Time Lord, it's the Doctor is the Time Lord that's responsible for everything. And I don't know how I feel about him being sort of savior of the universe.
I think they had shades of that beforehand, like the whole he's fire and ice and rage in the heart of the universe.
And also there's the path they never went down with the Doctor being the reincarnation of the other, which like no one really works.
The interesting thing that I've noticed with between the Tennant-Smith break is it really is a break. You know, you have the Davies Doctor Who and then you have the Moffat Doctor Who, and it is very starkly different. I mean, obviously they both have very different storytelling techniques, that have different pros and cons to each. But it's like, Babies had this big finale with all the companions coming back and everybody involved, and then all of a sudden, even though throughout we've had that, Jack came back and went away, and we have various characters that keep coming back, all of a sudden that world is closed. I feel like we're never gonna, Martha may still exist, but we're never gonna see Martha again. And, and obviously Rose is in another dynamic dimension, so that's sort of, we're not gonna see her again, but like, there's these characters that theoretically he could cross paths with again, but I feel like the way that they made it such a big break, it really felt like an end and a new beginning. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it was such a stark difference.
Well, there's a lot of that actually falls back to the old series, because the old series was a lot like that. Every time a companion left, that was it. You never saw them again. You barely ever heard of them. Things, story points would change. And that's the thing that I don't like about it is that in the current series and the current format, the way that they're telling the stories, I feel like the whole series from 2005 has been a dead run, and you're not getting half the story that you can get. If they would go back to a more episodic format where stories are drawn out over 5, 6, 7, 12 episodes per series. It would,
I don't want to go back to that. I'm sorry.
All right, we have in the red and then in the back.
In terms of the Doctor being more than just another Time Lord, it's actually a little harkens back to some of the Seventh Doctor stuff where before the show got canceled, they were setting up this big thing, the
Cardinal Master Plan,
which I don't know what that much about. So there are. This isn't, whenever you think about Moffat, he's not just making these stuff completely out of his head. There is stuff in Classic Who that does give that the Doctor isn't just another Time Lord.
Well, they were trying to reintroduce some more mystery to the Doctor's past during the Seventh Doctor's reign, and we find out that he had another super Gallifreyan artifact, the Hand of Omega, and then he had another super Gallifreyan artifact, the Metal of Validium. He was one to destroy Skaro. He was the other to destroy Cyberfleet. And then we find out he's Merlin in another reality. This was all started to try to bring some more mystery back to the Doctor.
See, the Merlin thing to me, I haven't watched that much Classic Who, that sort of just struck me as like the sort of random stuff that happened. But that didn't feel like making it special as such. That just felt like the sort of random stuff that the Doctor does.
Also with the new Who, going back to that, the thing with Amy, the introductory bit, that just threw me for a loop. Because it's like, you don't need it. And so you can like throw in episodes where Amy's not even in the episode. So I don't know what people think about that, but That when how when they started with the 11th Doctor,
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
She would do the intro.
Man with a box.
Oh, you mean during the opening credits?
The thing that bugs me the most about it is it doesn't start it's in the 6th season that it started happening. Like, I could vaguely understand they decided like, hey, we need to have this introduction in season 5, but no, it's the 6th season that she points out like, also then it sort of ignores the fact now there's in season 6 there's Rory a lot of the time, and
well, there's a last shot with a picture of Rory in it that they're in Venice.
but like the narration ignores Rory.
That was just introduced for BBC America, wasn't it?
Yes, it was only on BBC in America. It was not in Britain. I guess they thought that the American fans were not bright enough to understand what was going on.
I think again looking at the context too, because right now voiceovers are cool in television, and so like being human, at least the American version, like voiceover every episode. Criminal Minds voiceover every episode, like, and sometimes it's appropriate, and sometimes it's not. I gotta say, I thought the voiceover for A Town Called Mercy, I was not down with that until the second time I watched it. I liked it better, but So I mean, again, I think there's some context that maybe they're trying stuff, or like you said, maybe they're like, oh, American fans aren't as smart or whatever. But but I mean, again, like looking at it in terms of the context, is when you have a show that spanned 50 years, like what other show on television, has gone through that much, and so I think that's important to look at the way things change, the way it influences television, and then the way television influences that show. So.
Speaking of television and the world at large, let's talk about violence in television. I want to talk about Craig Ferguson for a minute. Because in the introduction to the Craig Ferguson episode where had Matt Smith on, they did this big thing that didn't actually get aired in the U.S. because they didn't have permission to use the Doctor Who theme, but you can find it online if you look for it. Anyway, in this big, long, massive song that they do, they talk about how Doctor Who is about intellect and romance over brute force and cynicism. And some of the previous Doctors had a lot more fisticuffs than I think we've seen in the new Who. What do we think, panel-wise, about the sort of physicality and violence in Doctor Who, and what role that's played, or whether that has a role?
It changes with the Doctor, it changes with the times. The first two Doctors, Hartnell and Troughton, hardly ever used physical force against anybody, except when the first Doctor tried to smash in somebody's head with a rock. Someone who was lying on the ground injured, and it was an inconvenience. Yes, the Doctor. Dr. John Pertwee, he was beating people up in pretty much every episode, I guess, because he was ticked about being stuck on Earth.
I love that.
Yeah.
Tennant says his hand is a fighting hand.
Yes. Only after he regenerated.
Right.
But didn't one of the characters bring that up with the Doctor in that big, the season 6 finale? Not that, but
in the mid-season finale,
They-
Good Man Goes to War, that
Yeah.
they're building the whole issue that the Doctor has. I think, especially the new Who, with destroying Gallifrey, and all who having destroyed Starro, all the killing the Daleks like 5 times, the entire Dalek race like 5 times, all that stuff.
They will never
Just
be
hard
one
how the
Dalek.
Doctor
Yeah.
Also, it's wonderful how the actors, that's forgetting thing is the first 4 Doctor companion to die in the surgery.
Harry Sullivan.
Yeah.
Harry Sullivan, they originally hired him and conceived of him as a companion because they thought they were going to have someone else who couldn't do like as much physical stuff because they were going to go for older.
That's
When
right.
they went with Tom Baker, he sort of became relevant. So that's kind of, when you think about it, that's kind of why I wanted to like that. Older yet.
A lot of I think, heroic stuff, at the beginning, wasn't it done by Ian? A lot of it.
Yeah.
Because he was the younger after that.
Yeah.
And then we get Jamie.
It's even like the whole thing about this weapons. It's like, the Doctor will use his fists when he has to. He'll use a weapon when he has to, but only when he has to. Only when he's exhausted everything else. And it's kind of,
Only Batman hates guns more than the Doctor.
Well,
To me, it seems like kind of a convenient out in some of the earlier Doctors. They sometimes had a male companion like Jamie or Ian or Harry because they knew that there were situations where they wanted to have fighting resolve a scene, but they wanted to have the Doctor be opposed to violence. And it seems like a little bit of a cop-out in some ways because they can kind of keep him pure, but they can still have some fight scenes.
So as a show that's lasted for 50 years and continues to be popular, do you think that's a piece of it, though, that the Doctor isn't necessarily always seeking violence, that this isn't a shoot-'em-up kind of show, that it's often the Doctor going up against races that are trying to be much more violent and finding a quirky way to give them a little jammy cookie and pretend that it's is that part of what makes the show attractive to the audience that it has, do you think?
Well, I feel like part of it is like his moral struggle because he doesn't want to use violence, but sometimes he really has to because, this alien race is it's trying to destroy the Earth or whatever, and he is forced to violence that he doesn't want to do, and that makes it interesting because a hero in some modern things, they're just a hero and they don't have this kind of moral struggle.
The Doctor's wiped out entire races, planets, civilizations.
Yeah. Well, I actually had a conversation about this recently with my boyfriend. We've been rewatching the beginning of the redo of the 9 season. And one thing I noticed is in that episode the End of the World, or the one with Cassandra, the first one with
Yep.
Cassandra, when he seemingly, like, as far as we know, Cassandra dies in the end of that episode. Obviously, we do find out that she was able to survive that, but he has no remorse for putting her, basically killing her. And we realized that it's sort of like, that's someplace that he's gone to a dark place, and it's not until he meets the Dalek a few episodes later, and it's pointed out to him that he is basically no different from a Dalek, and that starts
You would make a good Dalek.
Yeah. And from then on, he becomes significantly more non-violent and very much preserving all life as much as possible. And it's before that, though, he does go to a very dark place where he's not above killing. So he's not always like that.
I think, again, you're looking at context, because the original Doctor Who in 1963 was a children's show. But the writers, they didn't want to just make schlocks, so they made something good that adults could watch too. And then what happened was it started to get this big adult following, and so when they rebooted it, the new Doctor Who is clearly for adults. And I think that's the difference, because the Doctor that I remember watching as a kid, I would never have conceived of him as somebody suffering from PTSD, been through this horrible war, on the front lines, never expected to survive, has this big aching loneliness. Like, that was never the way I conceived the Doctor when I was a kid. But I watched that first episode and I was like, wow, this is really good. And as an adult, I can really appreciate this, And so I think there is a different level of violence. It was more cartoony back then, and it's more like gritty and real now. I'm thankful, though, that they've not gone to that really gory place. Like, I'm not a big fan of gore and violence just for, graphic violence and just for the sake of violence. And I know that that's where a lot of TV shows have gone now. And so I'm really glad that Doctor Who is exploring more of the, the intellectual side of that, and the moral questions about it. And I wasn't sure that I was going to like this, but I do like knowing that the Doctor's not perfect, and seeing those descents and how he comes out of it. Help him. I think that's really cool.
So I think also, since the original Doctor Who, like the classic series, we now have Doctor Who, but now we have Torchwood, which is a little more adult oriented, and then we have like the Sarah Jane Adventures, which
is
very much children oriented. So now you kind of have that world accessible to everybody.
And the Canine Adventures.
Yeah,
that
would. So it's like if you're looking for something a little more adult, Torchwood has the sex.
That's
It makes you wonder if there's anything that comes to death for the monster.
So we see with John Hart. Ooh, that's love. I got a question for you guys.
Yes.
Doctor Who's been around for 50 years, but because of practices in the BBC in the 70s, we are missing chunks of Hartnell and Broughton. What do you guys think of the fact that they're now taking the audio, which they do have, and animating it for the new?
We watched a couple of those, and that's.
We watched The Invasion, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's not easy to retro-engineer something like that, but they did a beautiful job.
But do you think they're doing it only because there's all this hype about the video?
No, they started doing that back in the 90s. Like as soon as the tech, they felt like technology had gotten to the place and they'd found enough of pieces of one episode. The Invasion, I believe, was the first episode that they did that for. And they started that. Yeah, I remember reading about it in Doctor Who magazine, like in the 90s. So yeah, no, it's definitely been around. Of course, it would have been around the 30s. So it may have been around the. But I think it, and yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's a moneymaker for the BBC. So, if it wasn't making money, it wouldn't still be around. I'm sure we all have shows that we loved, Moonlight,
It wasn't only Doctor Who that suffered this treatment.
That was all the shows of the BBC.
But the fact that it is now making money and it is kind of cool, I'm sure they're going to milk it for all it's worth. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen, but in the stores now, there's Doctor Who Monopoly, Doctor Who Yahtzee, like
Doctor Toothbrush.
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna go with when I was a kid. Yeah, I could get a TARDIS key and a bumper sticker and maybe a T-shirt, and that was it. So
Something else that's crossed my mind, just sitting here looking at everything, like the franchise of Doctor Who now is remarkable. You can get Doctor Who anything.
Speaking of Doctor Who anything, if they made a Doctor Who movie, who would watch it?
I'd watch it, but they're
I mean, I think in terms of they make that first successful basically isn't
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
It's gonna be like 90 minutes or something.
And then there's like the Waters of Mars especially, but they're also really nice.
Well, those are only about hour long.
Those are like an hour and 1 minute.
I mean, like end of time, both parts together is about.
Yeah.
So, I know Doctor Who is the second part of the new series is well, the current season is coming on tonight. But is that the
Tonight or
Cybermen?
tomorrow?
Tonight. 8 o'clock on BBC America.
So, I heard a rumor that in a couple weeks now, when the Cybermen come back, they're going to be from Mondas, not from the parallel universe.
There's supposed to be a new type of Cybermen coming in.
That's the original type of Cybermen were from Earth's twin planet Mondas.
I feel like Moffat, I've read somewhere that Moffat is considering all the Cybermen that showed up in his stuff being Mondas Cybermen. They just haven't had the time prior to this to like make new suits to be reflect Mondas rather than the parallel universe.
Interesting. Okay.
Sounds like the BBC.
Yeah.
And don't forget with wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff, you can pretty much do anything you want. Like, Cybermen are an alternate universe.
You can blame everything on the Time War now.
Yeah. Time War and then rebooted reality.
That raises 2 points actually. One being, how are they ever going to deal with the Valyard?
Now, I was thinking that maybe that space pollen could have been the Valyard.
Two, how do you guys feel about the fact that they're going to have to come up with some gimmicky way to go beyond the 12th regeneration?
They've already done that.
Yeah, they already did.
They did that in Underworld with another race of aliens
Right.
who were able to regenerate 1,000 times.
But that's the thing is they've made a big point of this.
Yeah,
There's only 13 lives.
I think all they have to do is give him some more regeneration energy. In the same way Tennant was able to not regenerate by throwing his regeneration energy into his hand.
River gave up all her regeneration to bring him back to life, and that's good.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
nothing else, they do is use that to
Yeah.
give us
Basically, saying he's got a whole new set of regeneration.
I mean, I know as a fan,
500 regenerations.
I pretty much put that in my suspension of disbelief box. I'm like, I'm just gonna let them keep regenerating the Doctor as long as the show stays good. If the show starts to suck, then I'll be like, okay, wait a minute. But
What if the 13th regeneration?
Very briefly, let's talk about non-white male doctors. Do we think that's a possibility?
It's been done.
Has it?
It's been done right here.
What?
An actress in 1984 called Barbara Benedetti played 5 episodes, and she was the Doctor. It's a fan film. So basically what would have happened if Colin Baker had regenerated into a woman. So if anyone's really interested.
There was also that comedic film where it was.
Oh, yes.
Yes, again, children. Yeah, the Children in Need specials. If you haven't checked them out, the BBC does a fundraiser.
Those were not very well done.
But they're hilarious. They're just hilarious. Yeah, it's just hilarious. Is that I just want to ask, because I'll fill people in. Is that the Canadian one with the blonde woman who has?
Seattle.
Yeah. Okay. There are some really good fan stuff that's been done, and that was one of them. I loved watching those when I was part of Doctor Who Club down in Florida. So if you get a chance to check them out, I do think they're online now too. So yeah, definitely.
I have several
But
of them if anybody wants them.
I would love to see a female Doctor. I don't know that we're there yet. I would love it if we were, but if I had to be honest, I'd say probably not. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. I think it's interesting. Like looking at the Doctor getting younger and younger. I think, and again, I think that that's going to what's happening in television these days and that kind of thing. You know,
Could just be Merlin.
yeah, I mean, I would love to see a person of color play the Doctor. You know, I mean, I think it's really. I actually was surprised. I was thinking about this in preparing for the panel. I was thinking about, you know, in how many ways Doctor Who did break ground by having these intelligent, not scantily clad women on TV, and you know, these powerful women and all this kind of stuff. But I was thinking about, like, Doctor Who never broke the color barrier. Star Trek broke the color barrier. So I was kind of like, yeah, well, yes, but I'm talking about back in 1963, like, you know.
Well, they
wait a
sort of
minute.
did in Planet of the Spiders. They had was it a white Time Lord regenerated into a Chinese Time Lord? Now, whether they used an actual Chinaman for that, yes, Campo.
But I mean, I'm just thinking, like, I was thinking about that in terms of that. I think it was interesting to see, like, places where Doctor Who did break ground and places where it didn't, and it always struck me as a little odd that they didn't break the color barrier in the original Doctor Who, because I always felt, growing up here in the United States, the TV and the things that I was seeing from Britain, I was like, wow, they are so much more progressive than we are. And I felt like it surprised me that it happened the other way around. So,
Last question. If the Doctor's getting younger and younger, what would...
He's not. But
it feels like that.
Okay, but what if for his 13th generation, he regenerated as a 15-year-old?
Already is.
Yeah, I don't think there's somebody.
Lived out his years, became an old man, and then that was the end of Doctor.
I will say, this came up at the other panel too that we did. Somebody asked about, you know, a child companion, and I mean, I think that's just in terms of you know, because my background is in theater and television as well, and so, you know, working with child actors is difficult. They can only work so many hours, you know, there's a maturity, you know, there's some really good child actors out there, but it is really difficult. It would be very difficult for them with the schedule that Doctor Who keeps and the ridiculous, I mean, if you've seen any of the behind the scenes stuff, I mean, those location shoots that they do and stuff, like, there's no heat, it's like 18-hour days, there's, you know, like, trying to break for food, like, all this kind of stuff. Like, a child can't work in those conditions, so the practicality of that makes the likelihood pretty close to it.
Well, they had Susan.
But she was a teen, yeah, but she was late teens, like, she was, you know, there were different.
And the laws were
Yeah, the laws were different, the laws were different then as well.
All right, so
We do have it.
we do, okay.
I don't know when this was, but sometime in the 60s in the original Doctor Who comic book, the Doctor actually did have two child companions, and I just saw this documentary about it one time, and it was something about how the Doctor went to the North Pole and Father Christmas was making like little toy TARDISes and something.
Yes.
And I don't remember much about the documentary, but at one point in the comic book there was child companions.
Okay. So, yeah.
Well, I just really quick wanted to mention what we learned about the first Doctor there, how she was his granddaughter, because the writer thought it would be weird for an old guy to be traveling with a little girl. So I think even though we're in different times, that's still maybe kind of.
Yeah, that could still be.
That could still just be weird.
Justification for it, because I wanted young Amelia to be his companion when she first showed up, because that actress was amazing, but it just didn't work out.
You also wind up, if the companion is the child, you wind up with the ethical concerns of you're taking this kid away from their parents without
That's true,
their
yeah.
and being in danger.
Yeah, that's true. So we're getting near the end of our time here. So I just want to very quickly mention, we're members of the Doctor Who Club of Western Massachusetts. We get together, we watch Doctor Who. That's what we do. We're over in dealer room B. We've got a big setup with business cards where somebody went to the trouble of figuring out how to write Doctor Who Club Western MA in Gallifreyan. The circle thing there is actually.
Except, Jonathan, told me there is no C in Gallifreyan.
So it's a K.
It's a K.
Yeah.
And
Mine.
you had mine was. You made your own thing, but it doesn't really work.
It steals more than access.
Yeah.
So you can't lose it.
So I wanted to mention, if you're interested in that, come check out our stuff. We do showings of older and newer episodes at Popcorn Noir in East Hampton every month. And that's
There's a movie theater that has real food.
And alcohol.
Yes.
Sorry.
So So real quick, we've got 5 minutes before the next panel. Oh yeah, there's a contest going on too where you can help us design a logo for the group. You can guess how many jelly babies are in the jar. You can
Surprises, I think, are all VIP memberships too.
to Popcorn Noir where we have our showing. So that would be cool. In our last 5 minutes, we're going to go through the panel and very quickly your favorite doctor and why. You want to start?
Favorite doctor and why? Tom Baker, he was the one I started on, and I just clicked with him immediately. And if I can just say two very quick things. Sylvester McCoy, Doctor number 7, will be at Long Island Doctor Who in November. And we also have another Doctor Who club here, the Knights, based in Chicopee. A couple of them sitting back there.
Cool. I'm going to actually go with Eccleston, just because I don't think he was given... I don't think he was given enough time to be the doctor he should have been, and I like the doctor that I saw, and I wanted to see more.
Yes.
But that was his choice.
That's what I was
just saying.
saying.
Like, that was his choice. He was like one and done. He was like, that was his choice. Yeah, Matt Smith, on the other hand, the producers was like, it's time to move on. But Christopher Eccleston, that was very clearly, he was like, I'm going to be one and done. So.
Yeah, so that's...
For me, it's a toss-up between Tennant and Smith. They both, because I was such a big fan of Eccleston, Tennant took time to grow on me, but I like the quirkiness about him, and I think that's also why I like Smith. So it's kind of a toss-up. I think that Matt Smith has a very alien quality. He's just so quirky and so fun that he has a very alien quality about him, and that's what I liked about Tennant as well. So it's kind of a tie.
Yeah, Matt Smith he's funny. I like him. I do like him, but David Tennant is my favorite.
Yeah.
Because, as my boss would say, he's so emo. I'm like, what's not to love? So, I mean, even though I will admit that there were times when but I felt this way for David, a little Christopher Eccleston and much more David Tennant and some with Matt Smith. I am getting a little tired of I'm the doctor, so that fixes everything.
Yeah.
But I believed it with David. Like, that's the thing. It's like David Tennant made me believe it, and I felt his pathos. So I was like, I was right there. I was feeling everything. Like I'd never seen the doctor cry before, you know. And so, yeah,
It really was
David
kind
Tennant
of
all the way.
emotional run
All the way.
All right.
Thank you.